Hello and welcome to Finding Joy, hosted by Capital One. I'm Lula Dualeh, the Director of Audience Development for Black Enterprise. Finding Joy is our joint video series hosted by Capital One that focuses on finding joy in the workplace and features Capital One associates who have cultivated joy through various professional experiences. Today's episode is all about finding joy in our communities. My guest today is Aria Norwood, a senior director and human resource consultant at Capital One. Rhea is here to discuss the communities she's a part of and the joy she finds through service and leadership. Rhea, I'm so happy to chat with you today.
So am I, Lula. This is just an honor to be with you today, especially about a topic so close to my heart.
Absolutely. So let's just jump right in. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what is your role at Capital One?
I'm a native Detroiter. I live currently in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, working for Capital One, leading human resources for some of the most fascinating businesses that are starting up at Capital One. Some are not even in the marketplace yet. They're an idea that's just now incubating, whereas others like Capital One Shopping is established, but we're driving high growth and really working to remove the roadblocks talent-wise to help them achieve their revenue goals over the next couple of years. In addition to that, I have a fantastic opportunity to lead a cross-functional group of human resource professionals across the enterprise to just eliminate the goo, eliminate the things that get in the way for all of our business leaders and the general managers to be their best self and to really ensure that the business grows the way they expect it to. Some of the craziest problems and thorniest problems are the things that I enjoy most about what I do today. And I joke with everyone, but it's really true that I'm living my best HR life right now. So enjoying every second of it, especially when I get a chance to dig my hands into some serious problems.
I love that so much. I mean, I couldn't help but notice there's so many powerful pictures behind you, including messages. Can you tell us a little bit more about what those messages are and why they're important to you?
Completely connects me to my community. Every photo behind me connects me to the places I've lived the longest. As I mentioned, I'm a native Detroiter, so you'll see Joe Lewis's fist just above my head. You'll see some wonderful streets and communities that are historic to Detroit that I served in my life from a child to my early 20s. And then the next place I lived with a very extended period of time was in Charlotte, North Carolina. But this was after years of moving every 2 years or so. I moved across all of from Oregon to West Virginia and all in between until I made this stop in Charlotte. And that stop in Charlotte was about 5 years. So you'll see to my left the pictures of the Charlotte clock from downtown Charlotte, or really uptown Charlotte. And in the center is a meaningful connection to just me and being a Norwood, a Detroiter, and now in the DMV area for 7 years. It's truly about recognizing my ancestors and the connections of how I am, who I am. Ubuntu, meaning I am because we are. I would not be where I am today or anything that I do for anyone else without my community. And that's truly what the root of that message is. I am because of my ancestors. I am because of the aunties and uncles that helped raise me on the block. I am because of the educators that truly instilled wonderful messages for me to carry on a lifetime. That is me. And if I don't find that connection, I can't find community.
Wow, Rhea, I have goosebumps. That was so powerful. I mean, this episode is all about community. Can you tell us, what does community mean to you?
Community is home. As I mentioned, I moved a lot in the first 15 years of my career. Every 18 months, which was fascinating to be, in my early 20s, bouncing around North America, actually, spending some interesting time observing people. And in some of those communities, I didn't find anyone initially that looked like me or had any background of living in a metropolitan area. Like I mentioned, from Portland, Oregon, it took a while to find some Black folk. And without my roots of serving my community, I would have never stumbled into a massive connection of people that looked like me and had like a service journey like myself in Northeast Portland. And although it was only 2 years, I was able to find home in those 2 years that it was in Portland, Oregon. Same thing happened to me in Morgantown, West Virginia. I can have the exact same storyline in Raleigh, North Carolina, or Calgary, Alberta, Canada, or Guadalajara, Mexico. Believe it or not, if I can find a way to serve others, I find a connection of people that may not always look exactly like me, but have the connections of ancestry and community and values that help me feel like I belong and align me to my purpose in being.
I love that. Community is always home for me. And I know you talked a little bit about the different communities that you've belonged to, either from Detroit to Charlotte to Portland to Canada. What different communities are you a part of at Capital One and outside of the company?
Yeah, so I started with Capital One about 6 years ago, and I was in the DC area maybe a year and a half prior. And because of the work that I was doing at the time, I didn't make the normal connections that I usually do when I move, which is finding a place to serve. Where do I connect? Until I joined Capital One. And what Capital One did for me was connect me to the intersections of my academic life, the things that I need to do to like grow my own professional career skills and things of that nature. And then just get connected in the community in general and meeting other people through an organization called Compass Pro Bono. And what Compass did for me at the time was give me an opportunity to use my day-to-day skills in human resources as an HR business partner to pour that in to a nonprofit organization on a day-to-day basis over 6 months. I got a chance to meet people from all walks of life, or whether they were attorneys working for the federal government, working for Capital One, or a series of other organizations, whether consulting firms or the like. And that was my first introduction to truly getting ingrained in the community that I could also say, I'm getting something for myself too. Serving my community is always something for me. It's kind of selfish for me because I really feel good when I serve the community. But to find an opportunity that had this intersection of being able to sharpen my own skill set, still serve the community, was really intriguing to me. And then I connected also with other alum from the University of Michigan and from Duke University. And it made it even stickier. Over the years, I'm still volunteering with Compass Pro Bono. Today, I'm volunteering as a board member.
Wow.
And Compass was also a connection to another area that is sort of a heartbeat for me, and it's dance. Like, I don't consider myself a dancer, but I've danced my entire life. And it just makes me feel great. And the first project I worked on was for a dance place in Northeast DC, and gave me some opportunity to, again, like I said, sharpen my skill sets as a pro bono consultant. But then years later, after serving that project, I was asked to serve on the board of directors for Dance Bliss as well. And so the two that kind of, when I think about what Capital One has done and the communities that it's connected me to outside of Capital One, I immediately think, wow, I don't think I would still be here. I probably would have moved back to Charlotte pretty quickly had it not been for the connections through Compass and through Dance Bliss. And then I started pouring into internally at Capital One. And whether it's the Black Resource Group and Voices, or the Women's Business Resource Group with Empower, I have an opportunity to kind of connect with other people like me who have similar walks and very different walks of life, and be able to find that sense of belonging and purpose, and then help me really understand the importance of connecting and developing others along the way.
Absolutely. I mean, Rhea, we talked a lot about being of service to your community, but I wanted to pivot a little bit and talk about leadership. Do you have leadership positions within different communities that you're a part of? And if you are a part of communities already, what advice would you give to someone who is looking to be more involved in a leadership role within their community?
It's a great question. And so I consider leading in different ways. You can think of leadership as a position of power. I serve as a co-chair of the board of directors for Dance Place right now. You could also consider leading from really helping to transform. And it could be in a more junior role. It could be in a volunteer role as a pro bono consultant. My advice to those who want to really get involved in leadership opportunities is to think about where your investment where you want that investment to be, as well as your passion. Because when I found those connections for me, it made it easier to serve and help transform and lead from whatever seat you're in. It doesn't have to be a title or power-driven leadership role. It has to be something you're passionate about so that you can help transform and create change and advocate for those who need your help and may need to figure out how to make those connections differently, or need to figure out how to advocate for themselves and get pay increases. So it's a competitive, equitable pay, or need to structure an organization so that they can actually have earned income in a nonprofit organization to be able to elevate salaries and invest in the capital for that nonprofit. Too often, those who actually work for our nonprofits and serve our community in different ways, their salaries aren't comparable to what you might find in government or in our private industries. And so being able to help use your knowledge and skills and capabilities to uplift the opportunities for others is leadership. It doesn't have to be power-driven or title-driven. It's leadership.
Wow, amazing. I know everybody who's watching right now are definitely taking notes from everything you just shared. Of the communities that you're a part of, is there one community in particular that you would like to highlight for our listeners?
I think I started with that and noting where my heartbeat truly is, and it's Dance Place. Over 40 years of being in the DC area, I have this opportunity to help transform, not just as a person who's on the board of directors, but as a person in the community, to help navigate Dance Place's next steps after the pandemic. And Dance Place is this wonderful intersection of education, dance, and visual arts. So all of the performing arts and social justice. And bringing that through a creative lens for those who may not be able to have access to the Kennedy Center or access to any of the other cultural connections in DC just because it's out of their price range, or access to dance education and the arts. It's right in their backyard. How do I ensure that that continues to thrive for another 40 years? That's where my heartbeat is right now. That's what I'm passionate about. And I think about when I first moved here, and there was a person that impacted me greatly, thinking about how I connect in the community. And this probably won't be any shock to Black folk, my hairdresser.
Nice.
My hairdresser made this connection and was like, yo, think about how you're going to serve DC. About how you're going to serve a community that looks and feels like you, that might be in the midst of gentrification. Advocate for them, invest in them, connect in them. And it gave me so much pride. It's what she does naturally every day for years, where she would just literally stop. She might have a client, and she did this for me, have a client who's not feeling the greatest or not feeling that connection, and decided, you know what, we're going to take a drive. Let me introduce you to a couple of things right here in Washington, D.C. And she did that for me when I first moved here. Then I had the opportunity to connect to Capital One, and gave me even a richer experience. Deciding this could be home for me. So I appreciate that. And I cherish that memory and cherish how I carry that, because it genuinely brings me joy on a day-to-day basis and still connects me to my great grandparents, my grandparents, and those who actually brought me to this space.
Absolutely. I mean, Rhea, there's so many different layers to your story, and I know I'm taking a lot away from this conversation. This series is called Finding Joy. I'm curious, when serving in your communities, what brings you the most joy?
Wow, that is even more layers. Lula, I have to say my purpose in life, truly the reason why I'm on this earth, is to pour into others.
Wow.
I made a choice not to have children. My partner and I enjoy our life the way it is. And as I look ahead and think about, wow, what have I done over the 40 some odd years of my life and 20 some odd years of my career? The same thread carries through from childhood to now, and it's pouring into others. How do I get an opportunity to pour in so that we can open up the door to get the best out of someone else? That's the way I nurture. That's the way I live. And that is truly the center of my joy. My family gets it. My family gets it. So there's a crew of people that I would say I've known since I was 12 and 14. And we're still together on a regular basis, helping to pour into one another, but also thinking about powerful ways that we can pour into other people that may be connected to us. Those are the people who help me be who I am. Their parents and grandparents poured into me as well. And so when I think about what I owe for just being on this earth and how I live my purpose, I can't help but to find home and have the fun that I have in my day-to-day job as well as in my day-to-day service, and call it joy. It's extraordinary connections like the folks at Dance Place and all of the different stakeholders at Compass, and then connecting with my colleagues at Capital One, connecting with folks at church. I have to say, those are the areas where I would say the community truly brings me joy.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of pouring into others and others pouring into you within your community, sustaining you, is really beautiful to hear. I wanted to talk a little bit more about service that we mentioned. When you're evaluating volunteer opportunities, how do you determine which ones make the most impact and need your time?
So first, I know that I enjoy the arts. So I enjoy cultural connections. And the idea that some people may not have access to those cultural connections, I think about how I can identify wherever I've lived an opportunity to ensure the art lives and thrives, and that people have access to that art, whatever that may be. In addition to that, I have a passion for ensuring young Black and Brown children have opportunity to truly express who they are as an individual without restrictive structure. So what I mean by that is sometimes it's me deciding I'm going to volunteer at a school. Again, don't have children, but I may volunteer at a school. Or in other communities, I sat on the PTA. Don't have children at the school, but helped to ensure that that opportunity existed. So the thread in this is, what am I passionate about? What do I care most about? And that's where I serve. Other people that I admire and look up to, they have very focused efforts in science and STEM, or focused efforts in women and children who are unsheltered. And that's where they pour their time in. At the end of the day, it's where do you find the most passion? And if you can't figure out that passion, just pepper into a community like through the chamber. Usually your local chamber will have a few things that you can volunteer with to just gain exposure. Volunteer at a theater. You know, when I think about Detroit and like volunteering at the Fox Theater, A whole lot of folks did that and made wonderful connections across the city of Detroit. Same thing happens here in DC. Volunteering at the Kennedy Center or other arts I will lean to, but it doesn't always have to be an art. What I can say is art's an interesting intersection where you're going to meet a ton of people and then use that as a launch pad to think about what's next. Same thing you can do with the schools, your local schools, great opportunity to figure out whether or not that's of interest, whether it's elementary or high school or anything in between.
I know there's a lot of people watching right now who might want to get started with volunteering, but might not know how to get started. If someone is wanting to get involved in volunteering in the community, what is your best advice to them as they prepare to volunteer?
Stay committed. Don't overcommit yourself, but really make a conscious decision on where you're going to spend that time and who gets the benefit of that time, so that you don't jump in and jump out. When the organization is counting on you and you make that commitment, it's critical that you deliver. So if it's a short window, just to test it out, try that. The other things that you can do, try and find some opportunities through work. Capital One's external affairs organization has a ton of areas for me to volunteer. I don't have to have a long commitment. It could be just a single day. It could be helping women learn how to dress and prepare for interviews. It could be, it could also be preparing our at-risk youth in the area to think about how to actually apply themselves for the workforce in different ways, whether I'm helping them build out a resume, thinking about the components of job skills that are relevant, or helping them prepare for an interview. That's a day. It's not a long commitment, but I still honor my day of commitment. It could also be just 2 hours of a commitment. Or it could be the example that I shared earlier, 6 months of pro bono consulting every week. And I can tell you, it was one of my best opportunities to find myself, to get connected in the community, and to decide I was committed to staying in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area.
Rhea, I can't begin to share how much I've taken away from this conversation. I know everybody watching is taking so much away from it as well. Is there anything that we left out? Is there anything that we did not talk about that you want to tell our listeners about finding joy in communities?
I would just say, think about who you are and why you're here. I know I keep coming back to this common thread of purpose. I have to say, that's how I find joy in my communities that I serve in. It's how I find joy in what I do every day. And it's also how I make decisions on whether or not I want to do it, and how I invest my time, my talent, and my money. So thinking about how it's actually pouring back into me. And if the space isn't right, whether it's where I'm working or serving, I need to make a conscious decision on how to withdraw myself, but also ensure that I've invested enough so I can make those calls without feeling like I'm under pressure to still deliver. I keep coming back to that purpose statement, and it truly, if I do things without purpose, I won't find my joy. And it's the thing that I will constantly anchor to.
Rhea, thank you so much for joining us today. This was such an incredible conversation on finding joy in our communities, and to Capital One for bringing us this incredible conversation. And thank you for watching and joining our video series on finding joy.